Well, the latest housing numbers are in, and they're starting to give us a clearer picture of what's happening in today's housing market. Hey there, Apryle Borst here with Arizona Best Real Estate, here with your August 2026 housing market update. Now, as always, we're going to be looking at what's happening both nationally and how it compares here in Arizona. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So we're going to be starting today with some encouraging news. Did you know that inflation came in lower than expected? Well, it's a step in the right direction, and that matters because lower inflation can actually help create a better environment for mortgage rates over time. Now, that doesn't mean that rates are going to suddenly drop tomorrow. I wish it worked out that way, but unfortunately, it just doesn't. But it is still something that we need to continue watching as we move through the second half of the year. Now, at the same time, pending home sales fell 5.4% from May to June, which was ending a 4-month streak of increases. And that tells us that buyers are still being careful about affordability, their monthly payments, and whether the numbers really work for them. Look, buying a home is a big financial decision, so taking a little bit more time, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, here's another number that really stood out to me. Did you know that 80% of sellers still expect to receive their asking price, or maybe even more than that? But nationally, 62% of homes are selling below the asking price. And that's a pretty big difference between what sellers are expecting and what today's buyers are willing to pay. Now, that doesn't mean that the market's crashing or that every seller overpriced their home. For some homeowners, especially those who bought only a few years ago at a higher price and have to sell, well, the market just looks different today. So once they factor in their mortgage payoff, commissions, closing costs, possible repairs, and concessions, well, they might not have as much flexibility as they expected. And unfortunately, some sellers may walk away with very little, and in some situations, even take a loss. Now, of course, that's not ideal, but it's just a different market than it was a few years ago. Now, the other thing that we're seeing is that more sellers are taking their homes off the market. In fact, in April, 5.8% of listings were removed nationally, which is one of the highest percentages that we have seen since 2020. And that doesn't mean that the sellers are giving up. It might just mean that they just didn't receive the activity that they expected, or maybe after looking at the complete financial picture, selling just doesn't make sense for them anymore. Now remember, national numbers give us the bigger picture, but real estate is local. So what does all that look like here in Arizona? Well, what we're seeing here in Arizona is that buyers are becoming much more focused on the monthly payment, and this is where things get interesting. More inventory can create more room to negotiate, right? And that can mean seller concessions. It can be help with closing costs, certain repairs, or maybe even a temporary rate buy down that can help lower the monthly payments for the first few years. Now, every loan and every situation is going to be different. But believe it or not, the lowest purchase price isn't always going to be the best deal. Sometimes the better deal is going to be the one that helps lower your monthly payments. That's why it is so important to understand all of your options, know your numbers, and know what may be negotiable. And then be ready when the right home comes along. Now, what if you're thinking about selling? Well, the first question should be, does selling make financial sense for you right now? Some sellers are having a hard time, and not everyone's going to be in this situation, but what we're seeing nationally is also something that we're seeing with sellers right here in Arizona. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't sell. What it means is that you need to look at the entire picture before making that decision. You need to understand what selling could realistically look like for you and what you may actually walk away with. Then we need to look at today's market, not just what homes sold 4 months ago, but what's currently for sale and what's pending, and what buyers have to choose from right now. Because look, buyers aren't only comparing your homes to the past sales, they're comparing it to every home that they could buy today. And that's why it is so important to work with someone who's willing to have those honest conversations with you, even when they're not always going to be easy. Someone who's going to help you understand the whole picture, right? And not just tell you what you want to hear. Because the last thing that you want to do is to keep lowering your monthly price only to end up where the market was telling you to be from the very beginning. Now, again, it doesn't mean that your home can't sell. What it means is that you need the right pricing, the right marketing, and an overall strategy to help your home stand out. Look, I've had sellers competing against homes that have been on the market for months and months. But by focusing on the right pricing, the right marketing, and creating that excitement from the very beginning, we were able to get their home under contract in less than 2 weeks with multiple offers, while still some of the competing homes are sitting on the market today. That's why it isn't just about getting your home listed. It's about giving buyers a reason to choose your home over everything else that they could buy today. Now, look, if you bought a new construction home, there may be some additional challenges for you. You may be competing against the same builder who is still selling brand new homes around you, sometimes even less than what you paid for it a few years ago. And on top of all that, they may be offering lower interest rates like 3.99% for 5 years, or help with closing costs, maybe upgrades or appliance packages, or even temporary rate buydowns to attract buyers. Unfortunately, that's just the reality that some sellers are facing right now. But again, it doesn't mean you can't sell your home. It just means that you need to understand exactly what buyers are comparing your home against. And those conversations are important to have before your home ever hits the market. And they're not always easy conversations, but they are definitely worth having. I mean, I would rather much be upfront with you about today's market from the very beginning than have you wondering why months later your home hasn't sold, especially after lowering the price 2 or 3 times. Then if selling does make financial sense, well, then we'll put together the strongest strategy, right, to help your home stand out from your competition. So what is the biggest takeaway from this month's update? Well, for buyers, don't just focus on the purchase price, look at the whole picture, the monthly payments, the financing options, and the opportunities that may be available to help make homeownership more affordable for you. And for sellers, make sure that today's market makes financial sense for you to sell. And then if it does, have a strategy that gives buyers a reason to choose your home. Now, every buyer, every seller, and every situation is going to be different. That's why real estate is never a one-size-fits-all. So if you're wondering what today's market means for you, or maybe you're thinking about buying or selling, or you just want to know what your options are, I'd be happy to sit down, go over the numbers, look at your local market, and talk through your options with you. Again, I'm Apryle Borst. No pressure, no confusion, just real answers. And I will see you next month for another housing market update. Thanks, bye.